Okay, what I've done so far is applied assembly lube to all the tappets and tappet buckets, slid them back in place. I put the two crown bolts or crown nuts on here with their washers. All the washers are on for the bolts to bolt the head down, and so I'm about ready to put the nuts on them, and we'll start the torquing process on torquing the head down. Now what I'm going to do is torque this in the pattern that it has. Each part of the block, or part of the head here, has a number on it. So I don't know if you can see, there's a number 1 here, number 2 over here, number 3, number 4, and so on. There's numbers down in the little holes here next to all the bolts. I don't know if you can see it. And then a number on the corners here for these end bolts. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to torque all of them. The book says between 16.5 to 19.5 pounds. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through and torque them all to 16, and then go through and torque them again all the way to 19, because I want to make sure this thing doesn't leak. So that's what I'm going to do here. So let's see if I can get you fastened in here. And I know this is not the best view, but it's the best I can do. But I'll take you along with me as I torque these. So got the torque wrench set to 16 foot-pounds, and I've already snugged them down to about 10 pounds each, and I did that same pattern. I just wanted to make sure I pulled this head down evenly. Two, number 3, check something here. Okay, I had to double check my torque wrench because I wasn't sure this one was clicking right, because I felt like I was putting way too much pressure on it, but yeah, I still don't like the way this torque wrench is working. So I torqued them to 16 with my inch-pound torque wrench, and I think that's where I'm going to leave them. I don't like using these long extensions on it. It's the only extension I have for this one. So I think that's where I'm going to leave them. Or actually, I'm going to go up. Okay, I'm going to go back over these. I've got my torque wrench. It's inch-pounds to 200 inch-pounds, which is like 16.667. And it says it should be torqued to 16.5. So just going to double check them all, get them all to the same torque. A little bit higher on the scale. It's still in the recommended zone. I think I'm going to have to get another torque wrench that will go higher. Like I said, mine just doesn't seem to be clicking right, and I don't want to over torque these too much. Just want them all the same torque in spec. Sorry, it's not the best angle, but I have this motor on a little dolly that wants to keep turning. So hopefully it's in the camera view. Alright, there we go. Everything's torqued down. Alright, got all the bolts torqued down. These 3 bolts here, they get torqued to, what was it, 5 foot-pounds, I think it was. So there's a bolt there, a bolt underneath here, and a bolt on this side. So the head's all torqued down now. So now we're going to get to the point of putting the cams in and torquing the cap bolts down. So that will be the next step in getting the chain set and the timing set. So more fun. Alright, now I have the cams in and the chain. So let me show you how you set the timing. So I have the mark down here. This one has electronic ignition. So I don't know if you can see in there, but I have the timing marked for 1 and 4 at top dead center. And if you can see the cam here on the exhaust side, it has a 1 with the arrow. You hit that facing flat with the case here, and then number 2 with the arrow pointing up. And then you count 20 rollers back and have on the 20th roller you have the 3 back here with a little arrow pointing up, and that's where the 20th roller lines up. So I should have the bike now in time. So now we're going to have to put on the other little caps there to hold the cams in place. So that's the next step we're going to do. Okay, now I'm torquing down the caps here to 6 foot-pounds. Already torqued this one. Torque in a crisscross pattern. There we go. That one. And I did have a pair of vice grips on here to hold the camshaft down. But when I torqued the first one, it fell off because I didn't want it to be too tight holding that cam down. So I guess once the resistance came off the vice grips, they fell off. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same to the back, to the intake cylinder. I'm just going to take this pair of vice grips, and I'm not going to monkey tighten it down. I'm just tightening it down enough to pull the pressure down on this camshaft here to get it pushed down. Get a nice even torque pulling all these bolts. So I'm going to pause it for a minute while I snug all these down, and then we'll come back on to torque them. Okay, so now I'm going to torque this down, 7 foot-pounds. Same thing there, the vice grips just released themselves because all the tension was off of it. Okay, now I'm going to put the vice grips on this other side.
Really fine threads, so it's really long. There we go.
Go. Alright, so they're all torqued down. So now we're going to move on to the next step and should be ready to put the chain tensioner in and then roll this motor over and see how it rolls over. Hopefully it rolls nice and smooth and we've got everything right. Okay, I want to show you real quick how this chain tensioner works if you've never seen one before. Hopefully I have it in view, but you have a set screw here that locks it into place and your lock nut there, but you can turn the dial and it brings the tensioner in all the way. And so you want it in all the way, so then we'll tighten it up, and then once we install it on the motor, we'll loosen this set screw here and it'll let the tension back out to push on the chain. And I'll go through all the steps on how to set it properly, but then you can lock your lock nut down, and you want just a little bit of play on it, so if the motor rocks backwards it actually releases some of the tension and tightens it back up, if I understand it correctly, but I believe that's how it is. It's been a long time since I had to set up this chain tensioner on this bike. I did have to replace this one because the one that the original one on the bike, the seals inside were leaking, and that's the good and the bad. This motor only had 11,000 miles on it, so it's like, yeah, you know, not much wear on the motor, but the problem with things sitting and not being used are seals go bad. And there's a rubber seal in here, and I tried to find one that would match it, and you couldn't find the exact size, and it just kept leaking oil. This was another place I had 2 oil leaks here, and then the cylinder head where we have just finished putting in a new gasket. So but that's the problem with a bike that, or anything, a car that doesn't get used much. You have seals that just dry up and fail, even though they only have 11,000 miles on it or less. And you know, from 1980 to 2022 or 2021 is when I found the leak. You know, that's a long time for these seals to just sit and not have lubrication on them, not have oil on them, and then they fail. So get out, drive your cars, drive your trucks, drive your bikes, get plenty of use out of them. I'd rather buy a high mileage motorcycle that's been well maintained than one that's been sitting for a long time. Okay, I'm going to try to set this show you how to do this chain tensioner, and hopefully I'm not blocking the view. But I've got a 12mm wrench on here for the lock nut, and we're just going to rotate it by half a turn or a quarter of a turn, and you can go up to a half. I want to see if it releases. And it felt like it released. And then we're going to lock this off. There we go. So I should have put tension. Okay, I rolled the motor over a few times. I've got the mark back to 1T. I don't know if you can see it in there. Our cam's still lined up. The 1 is facing straight ahead, the 2 is up, and the 3 is up. So I think we're good to go. Should be 20 links between the chain. I will double check that, but looks right. I didn't see the chain jump or anything. And I put a lot of assembly lube on the cam. Alright, get the valve cover on. My battery kind of went dead right at the last of when I was turning the motor over, checking the timing. Everything seems to be right on. So next we're going to put this valve cover on, put the gasket on, a little bit of gasket sealer around it just to kind of keep it in place. Just a real thin layer, kind of seal everything up. Make sure we don't have any leaks. So I'm going to put that on now. Alright, hopefully it's in view. Got all my bolts here. I don't know if it was necessary to really do them in order, but kept all the bolts in the same place. Figured can't go wrong with that. So let's see. Get it on there, snap down. So I'm just going to make sure all the bolts can go through. So this being such a gasket covering such a big area, make sure it's lined up, and it's not. So just kind of get it through once the threads start. Alright, so this is what I'm going to continue on through all of these. I don't think you want to sit here and watch me do all of them. So I will be back once I get them all in there, and we'll start torquing them down. Alright, got the valve cover back on, torqued it down to 7 foot-pounds. So theoretically the motor is ready to go back in the bike. So I will have to clean my little bench off that I've been using here and get it ready to go back in the bike. So hopefully this thing will be back and ready to be fired up soon.